Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Yes, my name is Shilipo Mutiba. As usual, every Wednesday, about 5 p.m., I come live and where I actually go through a question for the week where I actually answer it and unpack it. So this week, I actually got asked, how do you go about in terms of getting a bond using a trust? And the question was in relation to that, is it the trust that get assessed for affordability, or are the trustees also subjected to the affordability test? And the crux of the matter is the fact that we need to distinguish between an operating trust and a dormant trust, or rather a fairly new trust, right? So you may find that there are cases where a trust is fairly new. You just opened the trust, you came to INTERGEN, and then you asked for your trust to be opened, right? Correct. Now, then what happens is that in that case, if, say, for instance, you want to take that fairly new or formed trust and you go to the bank and then you want to buy that particular property, the bank, because the trust doesn't have any form of affordability and track record in terms of cash flow and assets base, they will then ask the trustees to stand for surety, like they will do with a company. Now, you will recall that the trust will have a normal trustees in terms of loosely translated and what we call an independent trustees. Of course, in the face of law, all the trustees are the same, right? However, in the face of the banks, those trustees that will act as independent trustees will not be subjected to an affordability test, correct? Right. So that's one thing that you need to highlight. So now the main trustee, if I may use it that way, is the one that their affordability is going to be assessed. Now, the second question was also with regard to, then in that case, who's going to stand for surety? Now, since the affordability of those trustees are then utilized to grant the loan for the trust, then the same trustees will be required to stand for surety with regard to that particular bond. So that's typically what you'll find with the trusts that are fairly new. But then what happens if now then you buy that property in that trust and then the trust start trading for a couple of years and then buy more properties along the way? So you might then find that the banks will then later on require the financial statements, the management accounts, and the latest management accounts, because you may find that, let's say, for instance, you're applying for the bond during the year of assessment of the trust, right? So then they will ask the latest financial statements, it needs to be approved, it needs to be adopted by the trustees, which is crucial. And then they will ask also the latest management accounts of that particular trust. So it's also important that it means your affairs and your bookkeeping needs to be up to date, correct? Now, so once you've given them such kind of a documentation, they might, if they feel that, or if they find that the trust actually, it doesn't have sufficient affordability in that way. So then what they can end up doing, they can actually end up asking the trustees to stand for surety. Of course, it's in the best interest of the bank to ensure that the more the more security they have on the bond granted, the better. Isn't that the case? So, but then that is basically how I've seen in practice on how the bank end up granting the bond for the trust. Of course, we've seen scenarios where it actually gets granted. So actually against the popular myth that it's actually harder to grant bond to the trust, I found in my practice that actually people are buying properties also using a trust because they tend to benefit through certain tax planning that can be applicable. So that's pretty much how I would like to answer the question. And yeah, as the question for the week, I appreciate that. So if you want me to answer some of the questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me, and then I'll then answer the question live. I'll be seeing you guys again next week at the same time. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.